have an awesome interview with Jeff Zapata today. But you know what? The interview was super detailed. Jeff spent a lot of time with us, so we had to split it up into 2 parts. So right now, enjoy Jeff Zapata interview, part 1.
Got an awesome guest here for you guys today. Senior editor in art entertainment products from 97 to 2011 for Topps. Editor and artist on various GPK and Wacky Packages productions. Worked with all the original GPK artists in the new series Day. Co-directed and co-produced 30 Years of Garbage, the Garbage Pail Kids story. And he contributed to most of the artwork found in the first 2 R.L. Stine Garbage Pail Kids books and is currently working on the 3rd. Jeff Zapata, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you.
I'm honored to be here. It's just great. Thank you guys for inviting me.
We'll get started at the top. How did you get started in Garbage Pail Kids? Give me a little bit of your background.
Well, I first started out in comic books. It was Neil Adams. A quick story. I was working at a place called Sound City in Manhattan. And I used to draw Batman comic books on these large projection TV boxes and stuff. And then I moved on and I worked on to Fordham University, being a supervisor and stuff like that, and going to college and doing all that type of stuff. And then I get a call saying this guy, Neil Adams, bought one of your TVs and he thinks you should be in comics. And my life changed right after that. And I met him. He gave me a letter. And he says, I want you to go to this place called Valiant Comics and show him this letter. And that's what I did. I went to a guy named Bob Layton that some comic people may know. And he just saw the letter and just said, you're hired, And I quit a good job for a low paying job because that was the dream, that was the dream, and but it was such a great experience to be in the old Valiant, being in a bullpen. And it really taught me a lot about, editing ethics, how to treat people, how artists work, how background works. And a lot of that has faded and a lot of it hasn't because of Photoshop and computer stuff and the way people do things now. But, back in the day, we used to photograph the art and stuff. And but that was my beginning. And it started from there. And then I got to work at Crusade Comics with a great guy named Billy Tucci, who created the character. And I got to do assisted editing, do background art, do a lot of marketing. We lived like kings, as Billy would say, because it was just a great time to be in comics. And I learned a lot from that. Thank God for Billy to let us. A lot of the people that worked there became other people. Like one of my best friends that worked there was Tony Bedard. Now he writes for video games and stuff like that, big video games. And so it's that sort of thing. And then from there, I got to know people like Jasmine, and her husband, Dan, because they worked in the comic business doing colors and stuff like that. And I got to know their company. So it's a really small family. So it's weird later that they got to work with Topps and we got to know each other and all that. So, so it's funny. I don't know if people know that I've known Jasmine before she was married, and her husband before they were married. And we got to work with each other, and I find it great that they're working with GPK because it's so poetic. They should be. And but that's how I sort of got in there. I quit comic books and I got a call from Topps saying, how would you want to be an editor for this thing called Star Wars Episode 1? And I was like, well, what? Yeah, well, I'm making my rice-a-roni or whatever. And I'm like, sure, yeah, and that was my introduction to Topps, doing the Star Wars souvenir magazine. Next thing you know, I was working there for 13 years, going to Wall Street every day, rain, wind, sleet, or snow. But it was great. I loved being part of the old New York, of being part of something great. I felt like I was working for the Daily Planet or something. And it was just fun being part of that mechanism for 13 years. It was fun.
Yeah, awesome. You knew Jasmine back then. We obviously had her on, and she was a phenomenal interview a couple episodes back. So they seem like really good people, and that's neat within your story that you knew her back in the day.
Oh, they're the best. They're the best. I love them both. I've invited them over to the house. Someday we'll have a pool party and we'll film it. But like, her husband is a great friend of mine. She, you know, we were in the, you know, the foxholes together, you know, and we worked with Garbage Pail Kids. We worked with movie stuff together. What I would do was draw like a design of a card or something and be like, I want something like this. And they would bring back like maybe 6 different sort of things of what I wanted. And eventually we had such a great work relationship that it went on through the years. So it was great to work with them again after comics, to work with them again in GBK, you know, so it was, you know, and there was a lot of other people like that as well. So it's a small family, you know, that sort of thing, but only a few people will transfer to the top side, you know, there's comic people, and there's card people, you know, so, but they could transfer because they were designers and great designers to this day.
Let me ask you, so if we're going almost on a timeline, obviously OS 16 was scheduled to come out, never happened for various reasons that we'll ask you about. And then all of a sudden, you know, during that dark period where there was no GPK at all, ANS is born. So can you talk about ANS a little bit? And at the time, was it a full bore project or was it more experimental to see how it would go and reintroduce GPK into the marketplace?
I would say the first and second were experimental. And I also have some ANS stuff to show you. Breakdowns from Tom Bunk, John Pound, people you might have heard. Probably never seen. I don't know. They've never been seen. Some of them were rejected. So I'm going to try to show it on this show today. But ANS started because I was doing Pokemon, and Pokemon was doing really, really well. We weren't doing the game cards. So the game cards are completely different. Game cards were doing well. We were doing like cards of the cartoon show. So you would see, you know, clips of the show, and the other sets we would do is just pictures of the characters and show them like Pokemon, pretty much. And I think that's what got like the president of the company, Arthur Shorin, thinking was like, God, we're making a lot of money or pretty good money on these Pokemon. Don't we have our own Pokemon, you know, somewhere, you know? And we were thinking, oh, we have Mars Attacks, we have Wacky Packs. Oh, Garbage Pail Kids. Garbage Pail Kids are sort of like, you know, Pokemon. They have simple backgrounds because the way we were doing Pokemon at the time was doing these, I did these weird explosive, sometimes psychedelic backgrounds. It depended on what the character had. And once we figured it out, we said GPK should be the characters that we should try to start out to try to be Pokemon. And to do that, we had to dab into the 16th series. And a lot of those years later did not reflect well, you know, for at that time, the sensibility was a little bit stronger. You know, we had complaints just on Pokemon. You know, I would do scenes of Pokemon and parents would be like, I think I see this, I see that. I'm not going to say the words. But, you know, and we're like, what? And just get complaint letters on dumb stuff like that. So imagine if we have, you know, someone looking at their watch and getting shot in their eye, or a kid in a baby sack, you know, nailing his mom, a nail in the back of the head, was at that time almost plausible. When back in the 80s, it was like, no one's ever going to do that. But, you know, now we're talking, you know, 2001, 2000, you know, 2000, or I forgot when it came out. But it was like, this could happen. So what we did was try to take the tamest ones and try to put them in ANS 1. So there are a few OS 16 in ANS 1 with new art from John Pound, Tom Bunk. And when we got them, it was almost like knocking on retired people. It was like, I haven't drawn these in years. and I don't want to draw them the same way anyway, even though at the time we were still scared of the lawsuit of drawing them in an OS style. So that's why if you look at ANS 1, you'll even see GPK teenagers. I think that Tom Bunk did. And I think we still landed on the style that Tom Bunk did, the style guide that he did. There were more Cupid dolls. They had cracks in them, hinges, that sort of thing. Certain agreements that we made when they did the lawsuit. So GPK 1 was an experiment in all types of ways. It was voyage to the bottom of the sea, of us in a submarine with a bunch of not old guys, but I'm saying veterans of GPK with us, and trying to explore in the depths of what we can still get out of this and not repeat, And at the time, I guess because of Captain Underpants and all that, the uppers thought that toilet humor was best instead of violence, so they tried not to get too much with the violence, which changed a little bit toward the arc of ANS. But it became, poop, pee jokes, that sort of thing, throw up jokes, a lot of bodily liquid jokes. And as me for ANS 1, I was an assistant editor. What I did was help get the art, pass it along. I had no choice of doing anything. It was only through ANS 4 did I started doing editing and making choices of certain things that I was able to do in a thinking tank with the other guys. But and I got to do a lot of gags, I think, between ANS 2 and ANS 4. Once I started editing, I'm like, I'm not doing gags anymore. I don't have to. So if you'll see, like, between ANS 2 and 4, there's a lot of gags I did, a lot of them. And they're still in a warehouse in, I don't know if Duryea is even open, but they got shipped in a warehouse. They got taken away from me. I went to my desk one day, they were all gone. So
no kidding.
I was like, I got it.
Yeah. Jeff, do you want to show us, you said you had some ANS stuff that's never been seen before. You want to show that to us?
So I think a lot of this is from ANS 6, but some of them were never used. So if you can see this one here, let me try to make sure you get it nice and look. Here's a nice Tom Bunk.
Oh, wow. Piece of pizza in there too.
And this is just a color photo thing, so I can just look at it and say if it's okay. Some of them have X's, they'll have notes on it, I think I put over there, put a smile, because the execs would say, we want them smiling all the time, smiling, which is why if you saw after I left Tops, I never had them smiling. It was just one of those things. This one was printed either later or during ANS.
Oh, that's awesome. Looks like Thomas the Train right there.
Mm-hmm. And here's one that John Pound and I did. So you can just see a little bit of the progression where, like, here would be a rough that John would give of an idea. And then if you look at the original, doesn't say the exact card number, but there is an original. You'll see that it's completely different because we work it out and we talk to each other, and we come out with different stuff. Here's another great.
Oh, I love that one. That's fantastic.
But it's great. I got tons of these things. And here's another one that we worked on together, me and John Pound, where this is, I think, the final drawing, but it looked completely different when we.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that card.
When we
started.
That's
good stuff.
Here's one. I don't know if it was ever used. I think it was. it was sort of like, the wolf blows down
Yeah, gotcha.
the house, but with a fart. And like, as you can see, a lot of it is toilet jokes. You know what I mean? And that's something that sort of bothered me at times. I don't know if this was ever used. I don't think so. Just married. And instead of cans dangling, it's a bunch of kid parts. And but this is all A&S. Here's a Brent Inkstrom rough Superman gag, probably never used.
Wow, fantastic.
If you want to see more Brent Inkstrom roughs, here's one. And these were all A&S. Here's another great Tom Bunk. I don't think this was used ever. Great whale one. See, like he's pinned to a whale.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Hopefully, I'm
Never
giving
seen
you
before.
Some exclusives here. I don't know.
Never seen
But,
before artwork, but Jeff Zapata, I love it.
And so you see, like this one was used. And then sometimes I would do these little roughs in the back just to get like, all right, can we get more of this? Just to see what we can do with. And this is funny because I think later on, I use this as this gag as a test piece. So if you wanted to draw Garbage Pail Kids, paint me this. And I think later on, DeJarnette is the one that won. He was the one I was like, oh, you won that one. So you got to paint, and I hired him, but I always wanted to hire him. But it got me, once he painted this, I got to prove, and I think we changed it from a witch or whatever. But it was something like this, of throwing up a garbage pail tree. And it's another one me and John Pond worked on about kid eating his own ribs in a restaurant.
I love it.
And then, like I would do is like, do a little more of this or make this simpler. Eventually, I didn't have to do it. But, I it goes on and on and on and on. I don't know if this was ever used. I have so many notes around it. I don't think it was. Kid as balloon. Yeah, I don't know. But I could go on doing this, but here's a good one. Kid getting
wow. Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Hooked over. Here's like more like side gags where the front, but in the back I got like a kid getting crapped out by a mule. I think I used that later.
So Jeff, you mentioned that you got back to your desk and a bunch of stuff was taken away at Pops. Like, why? What happened there? What was that story?
Well, I was a little heartbroken because some of those I drew at home after work. But I think what Topps thought was like, let's take these before, because they knew there was probably some sort of monetary value after it, because they were seeing after a while, wow, this, Garbage Pail Kids, anything connected to it is making money. And just one day I went to my files it was all gone. And I said, what happened? Well, we went over there and we took them to Duryea. Duryea is where they filed everything. And I was reminded, like, well, a lot of these were drawn during, Topps hours. So it belongs to, to us or whatever. So I was like, okay. So I only have very few pencils that I left at home. that I did, but I have a lot of photocopies. But a lot of the originals are still in Duryea somewhere in some crate, some kind of thing like that. And but yet I understand what they were, doing. There's some executives just saying, this guy, hey, this guy can make a lot of money for while he's drawing at work, and that should belong to Topps. And at the time, Topps was also opening Topps Topps Archive, where they were selling roughs and things like that. They even had an Art Spiegelman sketchbook that was like this thick, full of his ideas that they still have, I think. I don't know. But it's, that's what you sign for. You sign on for that. And, it's not something I was shocked at. It hurt me a little bit. It was like, oh, I wish I could hold on to that. But in the same time, I understood the company point of view of it. So.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that stuff, Jeff. That was all awesome. And again, a lot of that stuff obviously has never been seen before. Let's stick with OS 16 because we kind of talked about it and touched on it a little bit before. Obviously, it was a little bit of a debacle and never made it past the printing press. It never made it onto shelves. Can you fill us in a little bit about what you know on what happened with OS 16 and the stories behind it?
Right. A lot of people, always thought of these sinister things where it was maybe some diabolical company conspiracy thing, or they were too afraid of coming out after the lawsuit. And it was really none of that. It was really that it wasn't selling enough for Topps to risk anymore, where it wasn't like, maybe if they didn't have the lawsuit, maybe they would have kept doing it, but it was just like, well, at this time it's not making it's done its course, and the same stores are not ordering as much. And so they didn't I'm sure they would have redrew some sketches, some cards or reversed, but I think it was at a point where they were like, you know what, let's not even bother doing this. And you have no idea how much time, I've done car sets where it's almost ready to print and they'll just you know what, let's forget it. I'm like, oh my God, all that time and money and we spent all that and it's done. And Topps has in their archives so many great never done before sets that are beautiful to look at. And they're done by some really great artists. Drew Friedman did one. I think John Pound and Tom Bunk have sets that are still in the Topps archives that have never been released, and they're edgy and great, very Mad Magazine like. But at the time, I could see what they were doing. They did one called Fairy Tale Stories that I think is genius. They're just genius, clips of fairy tales, but done really weird, but if I remember. But I got to see that, and it was a pleasure to get to the archives and get to see those things that no one's ever seen, or test card sets that no one ever seen. It was great to see the first Man on the Moon, the first set, or the first Mars Attacks test set, how it looked, so it was a great experience. It's like being in a time, some sort of time, some time capsule, and you get to go over there and I would sometimes leave that room in tears. It was just so beautiful, because not only that, they had confectionery, not just the cards. Topps did confectionery and novelty items for years. So all of that was there. So you really got the whole dynasty of Topps when you walked into that room. And it was great. And it was also the reason why they had them was to give new editors ideas. They had them in binders and everything, certain sets. And one time I found original art between the binders that were by Norm Saunders, and like an idiot, I'm like honest about it. And I'm like, I would never steal anything, but I was like, I thought it was going back to his family. But they sold them. They sold them. But it was something they were about to throw away. We were cleaning it out and we were throwing it away. And then I looked between a piece of paper that was binded on this binder, and I'm like, I don't know. Let me rip it open. I think there were 6 or 7 pieces, original pieces of Norm Saunders art. It was about to be thrown in a dumpster.
Unreal. Absolutely unreal.
You heard it here first.